Hello and welcome back to Leadership Talk. This is the channel that is offering interesting discussions for our leaders from the Sandaraella Leadership Training YouTube channel. I'm Sandra. So today we want to talk about another interesting discussion around the evolution of change. And you know, change happens for all of us. And as leaders, my goodness, we are always having to respond to change in a variety of different ways. We've been fully engaged with change, certainly over the past 2 years, and even dynamically right now in our organizations, change is really hitting us in many ways. And so that is an interesting discussion. I know that we're always talking about, we're looking at ways of how we want to make some of these interesting changes, live through those changes anyhow. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more today. This is a 5-part series. We will be only looking at part 1 today. So it's a bit of an introduction, and we will talk about certain elements of change that affect us personally. So on that note, we'd like you to like, subscribe, comment, and share any of our content here on the Sandaraella Leadership Training channel. So when we look at change, there's a number of different things that happen. And so one of the things we want to ask you is to reflect back on how you have dealt with change. What kinds of things do you do? Have you felt in a certain way that you've been not able to move past all of the different changes that are happening? So we look at change and we recognize that change will certainly hit us psychologically, cognitively, certainly physiologically. There's all sorts of things, it's kind of confusing, it's kind of engaging, it's so many things that are mixed up in change. And the interesting thing about change is that often it really is unpredictable. Even when we're in the midst of change, we may make projections as to how things might occur or what the outcomes might be, but often we really don't know what that might be exactly. So let's talk a little bit more about that. And I'm just trying to set up my next set of discussions here. So we'll be right back. So the interesting thing about change is that certainly as we have so many different kind of viewpoints around that, and so many different kinds of definitions, I guess, that would kind of fit for what is actually happening for us. But what we want to share with you is a description that was shared by another organizational specialist who wrote certainly extensively about how change and transition has impacted our leadership communities. So from William Bridges, who wrote the Managing Transitions, he basically had made the opportunity to look at what change is compared to transition. He basically thought that change was really a situational kind of thing. It happened to do, looking at your new boss who might have started on your team, the new policies that have been engaged, the new site that you're now having to move to. Whereas the transition part of it, he saw as more the psychological process that people go through. How are they coping during those new times, during that change? So think back about how you were affected by change when the news came out, and then also when you're going through, trying to absorb all of these changes, what was actually happening with you during that time. When we think about change, we may adopt a positive mindset, and we may also have a negative mindset. The positive mindset, of course, would be to look at change and say, you know what, it's inevitable, change will happen, it will affect our organization, and we just need to kind of move with it. Sometimes we have actually initiated that change through our contributions. Maybe it was an audit that we did, or there was a report that was filed, and we were part of that process as well, that now is driving the organization, to adopt these new changes. And so these are things that we recognize. We recognize that change can halt us, from moving forward, or it may actually drive us to do something more. Also, we need to recognize that change also has the other point of view, where there's the mindset where people may feel that change is, stopping them from doing what they want to do. They've lost their ability to have that flexibility or autonomy to work how they want to lead their teams. Sometimes they might be resentful that certain changes have now started, and they wanted to, refer back to how it was done in the past. It may not have been an efficient way of doing it, but certainly it was something that was comfortable for them at that time. So how does change, or how does stress really affect us? I mean, change, involves amount of stress, as well as the transitions that we go through. There's that connection to stress as well. So some of the things that we look at, certainly during those times, is that we recognize that change can be stressful, and transitions can be stressful. It can keep us alert as to what's happening around us. We can have sleepless nights. We can worry a lot. We can know that change and stress can have an effect on our ability to make good, sound judgments. Sometimes we're irritable. Sometimes we have some other serious physiological changes that are happening to our body, panic attacks, pains in the chest, shortness of breath, all of these different kinds of manifestations that comes up because change, certainly when we're not prepared, it can really affect us in many ways. So just take a moment for yourself and just kind of reflect back to how change has affected you, and what did you do at that time to try and just mediate things so that you weren't feeling so stressful at the time. So what can you do now about the change? I guess one of the things that we want to look at is that we want to, see how stressful it is for us right now. We need to consider whether or not the change is urgent. And also we need to look at what time do we have? Do we have more time to prepare a more detailed transition plan? So what you can do now, certainly initially, is that sometimes you need to take a walk away from your desk, take a breather, try and get yourself in sync and aligned as to what the announcement is that you've heard with change and what's happening with you. And so you might need to take a few minutes. Sometimes you might not have enough time to do that, but if you can, take a moment to walk away, just take a moment for reflection. That might be helpful. Some people do that at their place of work. They might leave their office for a short while. They might go to the park outside, parking lot, whatever, go and visit someone else in another part of the unit or location at your business. So you need to be able to kind of deal with that, in terms of what's happening with you. And then you need to also look at, is that change urgent right now? And try and look at the urgency of it. Is it life and death, you must do it now, or do you have a little bit of a window time? If you do take a little time to make a decision, how will that impact that particular event involving change? Because sometimes with change, people feel that it's they're very insistent, it needs to change and happen now, whatever those modifications are. And sometimes it doesn't need to be that immediate, but it needs to be sooner than later, of course. And looking at the time to prepare a plan. So you want to be able to map out what it is that you want to do. Who do you need to call upon? Do you have to, strike a meeting? What are the things that you need to do? Do you have to stop production? Do you have to call your lawyer? Those kinds of things, as you're looking at the plan, you need to pull that together. So those are things that we want you to think about. We're just wondering if there's anything else that you might do during those times, and share that with us, or even just contemplate that on your own. One of the things we'd like to ask our leaders to do, and when we're thinking about change, and change has hit us in many different ways, it comes up. We'd like you to look at doing a kind of preemptive kind of plan earlier on, contingency with regards to how you want to deal with potential matters that involve change. So we're suggesting that you look at identifying 5 people. So those could be people that could be a mentor, could be another leader that a spouse, professional association, a very good and trusted friend. It could be anyone that you know and who's connected with you. And just as a courtesy, contact them and let them know that you kind of identified them as that support person for yourself. In the event, that you ever need to call upon them for their advice or whatnot, would they mind? How would that work? And the nice part about that is that because you've now built that really good safety net for yourself in the event something has happened, because sometimes when the stress of the change is happening, you might be like looking at, who can I call? What can I do? And those kinds of things will kind of preoccupy our time. Just like how people may, some believe in preparing a plan for other, important parts of their life. Having a transition plan with those key individuals there is also really good for yourselves. So think about that and try and utilize those kinds of elements so that that you're not alone at that time. The other thing that we want to suggest is that we aren't, encouraging any of our leaders, to transfer any of those stresses onto their teams. We want to be able to, deal with the stress that we have, manage it. We also recognize that we are leading teams as well. If for some reason our stress is taking more of our attention and that we're not able to make those sound decisions and that we need to take time away to have a break or whatever, we'll have to, certainly prepare that so that our teams aren't impacted. We want to, recognize that our teams are wanting the leaders to lead them into these different unknown and difficult moments for change. But the key thing, what leaders can do, will be to tell their teams that, you know what, we're going through some change right now, and we're going to be able to work through this together. When I have some really good information, we'll be able to, discuss it. But at this point in time, there's really not a lot that I can, tell you, but I just want you to know that I'm just working on it. So it's just trying to reassure them as well. So those are some things that we want to share with our leaders, and look at recognizing that anytime change can happen, we need to be prepared somehow. And so try and make those plans, try and make those connections, so that when you're needing those people, or needing to know what step you should take, you have a number of different people that you could call upon, whether you call upon all of them or just maybe one or two of them might suffice. So we hope that this has been helpful. And if there's any information that you want to discuss more, please put it in our comments section. We'll have some links as well. And we continue to go on with the discussions around the evolution of change in part 2 that will be coming up. Thank you.